Well, there's something else being considered at the State House that Joe alluded to that some consider a waste of time. It was one of the three issues Governor Little allowed during this special session, the Coronavirus Limited Immunity Act. The wording of the bill: a person is immune from civil liability for damages or an injury resulting from exposure of an individual to coronavirus. Meaning, if you go to a store or a restaurant or a bar and you can prove you caught COVID from someone who works there, you can't sue the owner of said store or restaurant or bar. As Representative Julianne Young said in her introduction of the bill to the Judiciary Committee this morning, we are dealing with something we cannot see and cannot control, and that is a virus. She called it a crisis of confidence. We don't know what's around the corner. And supporters of this bill, they hope it's not a flurry of tort filings. As you can imagine, personal injury lawyers, not big fans of such a bill. Holding people accountable for their actions is how they make their money. So we asked one about House Bill 6. Kurt Holzer told us it's a solution in search of a problem in so many ways. And one of those ways, he says, is that liability is already a hard thing to prove anyway. And allowing immunity for COVID takes away what Idahoans consider sacred: personal responsibility.
My basic take on this bill is that it says you don't have personal responsibility for your behavior, even if you've acted irresponsibly. Even if you've hurt somebody through negligent behavior, you can get away with it. And that just doesn't make sense to me. My fundamental belief, and I think most Idahoans think, you should be responsible for your actions. And if you understood sort of the complexity of all the law, you would see that this special immunity, special rights type of bill isn't really needed.
Who's it meant to protect?
You know, I think what it really protects against is a measure of irrational fears. I don't really think it does a lot to protect people. It does put some people at risk. I compare it to when your 8-year-old wakes up in the middle of the night and is scared of those pirates or those monsters under his bed. I mean, he's really scared, right? It's true. It's real to him. And that fear is real and experiences it just like any other fear. But there aren't pirates under the bed. There aren't monsters under the bed, right? And you know that as the parent, and I know that as the adult. And this is sort of that type of thing where they're scared of something that's not real because they don't fully understand the situation.
Basically what you're saying is liability is a difficult thing to prove anyway.
Absolutely.
And this would just totally absolve that.
Well, what it says is you don't have to pay attention to what you're doing. The right to a civil jury trial, the right to hold somebody accountable for their bad behavior, that's enshrined in our Constitution. Not just in the United States Constitution. 7th Amendment to the United States Constitution says you have a right to a civil jury trial. But in Article 7, Section 1 of the Idaho Constitution, it says you have a right to a civil jury trial. And this type of legislation that takes those rights away from citizens to make decisions about responsibility and how we have to treat each other in society, I think it's just misguided legislation.
I think in this, as we get through this whole COVID thing, we've learned on a week-to-week basis, things change. There's a lot we don't know and a lot we're just learning about it. And I think there was a lot of people that thought, wait a second, if I send my kid to school, or the teachers, the principals, the superintendents, if we take kids into class and somebody gets sick, could a parent sue us?
So it's whenever somebody says, could he sue? I'm sure they could. Could they be successful in suing you? And the answer is almost certainly no, because what if we watch the school boards and these organizations do? They've wrestled with the issues of we have multiple obligations of safety and obligations to provide a universal free education. And they have to wrestle with those issues. And as long as they do it reasonably and they're balancing these things reasonably, there is no liability. Right? You have to have engaged in bad behavior. You have to have been negligent. You have to have a duty and breach that duty, and it causes damages for you to have any exposure. And again, so I think this issue of being scared of the monsters under the bed, right? That's really what it is. And I get it. That's why I would rather we talked about what is the duty, what are the obligations, and let's proactively teach people what we expect from them as a society instead of saying we don't expect anything from you.
Well, going back to that monster under the bed analogy, Holzer says in that situation, a parent can turn on the light and talk about how there aren't any monsters under the bed. And he says, as you just heard him say, he would rather see the legislature discuss those obligations that business owners have to their customers when it comes to COVID-19. Holzer also says Idaho laws are a balancing act between the I, me, mine, and the we, us, our mentality. And this bill unfairly biased toward the selfish view of the world, where I can do anything that I want. And comparative responsibility in Idaho law, Holzer adds, already does a fine job of handling such sophisticated issues. House Bill 6, as you heard Joe say, now in the Senate.